Thanks for coming back after lunch. I'm always happy when people do that. It's always a worry that people might bleed off. Um, we have called this session the Training Dilemma. Now, we could have given it any number of titles, the Training Conundrum, the Training Wicked Problem. We ran out of superlatives, I think, didn't we, Leanne? But what we were trying to do was encapsulate the issue of training from the perspective that it is an incredibly complicated conversation, it's incredibly nuanced, and it has a lot of different perspectives. So in its best form, training enables repair. And anyone who has picked up a new repair skill will testify to how great it feels to pick up a skill and to achieve something remarkable, which is to repair an item that would have gone into waste. So on one end of the continuum, repair is an enabler, and it's the pathway to reuse and to continuing the valuable life of products. But at the other end of the continuum, of course, repair is used as its own particular TPM, as a barrier to repair. And it's often used as an excuse or an argument put forward by those who are not interested in sharing repair and service information as a reason for not providing that information onto the market. You don't have the training, you don't have the skills. If we give you this repair information, it will be dangerous to the operator, to the repairer. It might cause danger to the user of the product, and certainly in the case of motor vehicles, it could cause danger to the community at large. So repair training is used as a yes, train, skill, enable, and training is used as absolutely an unnecessary barrier to repairing products that could usefully have extended life in our communities. So that's why I wanted to have a conversation about it. We know that there wouldn't be a person listening or involved in the repair community who doesn't believe in training. That's not the issue. I'm not talking about just give it a go. See how you go fixing your own pacemaker, I'm sure it'll be fine. We all believe in training. What we're talking about is fit for purpose training. We're talking about appropriate levels of skill. We're also talking about accessibility of training, and we're also talking about equal and open access to that training. So it is about that nuanced conversation. So that's why I wanted to have this debate today. We've got some great speakers lined up. And we're going to try, if we can this time, to keep our presentations a little shorter because we really want to go to a conversation. And have a conversation with you about training, because we think this is a dialogue we're going to be having for some time. And we also think as a repair community, we've got a lot to learn from each other in coming to a position that both enables connectivity, that upskills our workforce and our repairers, and also gives the regulators some confidence that we are managing our risk and that we are repairing safely for operators and for users alike. So let me talk to you about our panel today. We have, I'm hoping very soon, we're going to have Andre. Here he is. Hi, Andre. Sorry, Alexandra. Hello. Hello. This is Alexandra.
Hi, can you hear me?
Ah, yes, we can. Success. I was hoping the after lunch sessions would run smoothly. Welcome. Alexandra Isaac is the CEO of the Repair Academy, so we're really excited to hear from him. First, he's going to be talking to us about his work. We also have Margaret Noonan, who's the Senior Policy Officer for Assistive Technology Suppliers Australia, and she's got a presentation for us because she's right in the middle of this conversation. And then we're going to have Brian Savage, who's the Deputy CEO of the Automotive Dealer Association. So a conversation with an authorised repair sector. And Brian's going to join our panel, and I've got some set questions for him to start us off. So without further ado, I think we're ready to go. Alexandra, please proceed. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I hope my connection is stable enough. As you can see, it's kind of early on my side, so I'm from France. And I'm going to talk to you about why I built the Repair Academy. It's very linked to what our host was talking about, and maybe everything I see we could do better and what's the goal of training people? Um, I'm not sure if you guys hear me okay. I don't have the feedback yet, so I guess you do. So Repair Academy, why this company exists? Well, I've always started repairing little things in my garage, I guess when I was very young. And the more I was repairing stuff on the side, I was doing my engineering studies on the side. I understood that many people would bring me their device not only because they had a problem with it, but they were so scared of opening it that they're like, okay, I have to talk to a professional. I was not a professional. I was just some kid in the garage repairing phones. Um, and actually, I learned that skill very easily. It's not that hard. So I work mostly in the phone industry. I did not present exactly what I do. Um, and after a few years, I started actually working on the motherboards of those phones. I was not only doing screens or batteries, which are pretty standard repairs. I would actually go with a microscope and a soldering iron and change one or two chips on that board to make the phone work for a longer period of time. When I started doing that, I started sharing my knowledge on YouTube. Um, so I guess that's a very, very small niche, the French YouTube micro soldering community. But after a few months, people, so actually trained professionals that had, repair businesses were asking me, a kid in the garage that was doing videos on the weekends, to teach them how to do that. And that's when I realized actually that not many people had that skill. And at first, people on the side told me, hey, you should not teach those people how to repair those motherboards because you're going to create competition on the market and you won't have the whole market for yourself. And my answer was simple. I'm only one guy. It's not my job, my full-time job. And we're talking millions, tens of millions of devices on the market just in France, about 60 million. So imagine how many of those we need to repair. Imagine how many of those need micro soldering on it. So I was like, hey, let's just train people to have more people on the market that can repair more phones so that more people don't have to buy new phones. So that's how I created that Repair Academy in 2019. Um, and so we started with just that one program, that iPhone microsoldering program, and now we're going a bit broader, a broader spectrum. So we're basically releasing a new training program every 4 or 5 months. So the latest ones we get out are a printer training program, which is not very common. Actually, if you ask around you probably know people that know how to repair phones, but people that repair printers are actually very, very, very unusual, even though printers have been around for decades and phones have only been there around for about 20 years. Um, so printers and screen refurbishing now. So that's very specific. That's when you can only replace the thin layer of glass on your phone screen instead of replacing the whole screen. We're working on MacBook micro soldering training, and then all the other, let's say, more basic training of how you change a spare part on a computer, a tablet, or a phone. That's basically everything we do at the Repair Academy. And our goal is more on the first side of the dilemma is how do we bring that knowledge to as many people as possible so that they have a good result. Good result means that if you, as a customer, you go to someone I trained, you need to be satisfied of the service, how fast they went, did he keep your data, um, did the part he installed was a good quality part, does the phone or the device repaired works? Yes. For how long? Did he put all those waterproofing adhesives back on? Is it clean? All those little details that make your customer experience as someone that went to the, okay, I'm going to repair my phone side instead of going to the, I'm going to buy a new phone side. It needs to be nearly perfect. And to get that quality of service, you need a good technician, but also for some people that have maybe a very small business, we also teach them partly the client relationship part of that. And on the other side, yes, we're talking about no manuals and maybe some manufacturers that are doing everything in their power, either to restrict repair by keeping the training part of it kind of secret, but also on some other side, making repairs as hard as possible so that even someone that's maybe self-trained can't go all the way. We have many examples. For example, when we started having those waterproofing adhesives on almost every phones, it was suddenly a lot harder to open them without having some proper equipment that would heat up your device, some suction cups, but not just a suction cups built onto some sort of metal pliers. I don't have the word in English for that, but it kind of opens up in a weird way. So you need a lot of different tools to actually go to a basic repair you used to just do with maybe a screwdriver and a little plastic pick. So by making them harder or hiding that training, you can't have everyone that can repair those phones. And our job is, if a device comes out with a new barrier on the repair side, we're going to work as maybe like an R&D team to what is the best solution to open up that phone without having $1,000 machine that opens it up for you, without breaking anything, with easy tools, cheap tools you can find. And this knowledge we have, can we train someone pretty quickly, let's say maybe in a few days, to do that process, or not? And regarding how hard it is, some parts we will say this is not going to be an easy repair. We'll only leave it for very advanced technicians. I guess maybe a lot of you have an iPhone in this room, and if you have a recent iPhone, you have a back panel that's made of glass. You probably know someone that cracked that back panel. Um, Actually, if you crack that little layer of glass and you go to an Apple store, they're going to do it's a swap, about a $300 or $400 US dollar swap. They change the whole part, not just a piece of glass. We are able to teach people how to change that piece of glass. And basically, you would think you just need to heat it up, take the pieces of glass off, and slap a new one on. In fact, it's a lot harder if you want to take that piece of glass easily off. You need to use a laser machine, which, I mean, it's a lot more dangerous to use a laser machine than just some hot air. And then the smell is really terrible, so it's actually kind of dangerous to work on that. You have glass shards everywhere. That's actually a dangerous repair, but just because the manufacturer made a device that has a part that's solely glued in with a glue that's actually really strong. It's more like epoxy. I don't know if that's the word in English. So that's just one example of how hard some basic repairs are not basic anymore. They're just becoming this industrial process where you basically need a maybe $1,000 laser just to open it up. That's basically my introduction. I hope I wasn't too long.
I thought before I get into the training and education work that we've been doing at Assistive Technology Suppliers Australia, I'd just put a little bit of context to assistive technology and what it's all about. So these definitions come from the World Health Organization, and they look at assistive technology as the application of systems and processes to the assistive technology products. And the products themselves are devices, equipment, instruments, software, anything that maintains a person's individual functioning and independence and well-being. They are also used to prevent impairments and secondary health conditions. So these are just some samples, and I noticed Leanne had a photo earlier of different assistive technology, but this gives you the consumables. So these are the kind of technology that might be more likely to be recycled than to be reissued. And this is considered very low risk. So here in the centre there you have a large print clock. It's a talking clock, in fact. On the top left you have a phone with images, and you might be able to press that image, which could be a family member, and that's very helpful, particularly for people with dementia and so on. And then you've got things like bendable cutlery and can and bottle openers, things like that. So everyday items that are very low risk. And then the next sort of type of AT that we're looking at is more the high risk. And top left, you might recognise Dylan Alcott there, the tennis player. Well, that chair would have been specifically designed for him. So you can imagine making repairs to something like that has to be pretty precise. Bottom left, we have a hoist, and that's taking a lot of weight as people are being transferred from one place to another. In the centre, I think he's probably very well known, Stephen Hawkins, the scientist. In this, he actually has a sensor on his cheeks, and his cheeks then, as he's talking, transfer that to the speech recognition through the device at the front of his wheelchair. And his wheelchair would have been designed for him to help support his posture and breathing and so on. On the far right is a sample of another high-risk piece of assistive technology, which is a paediatric chair. So that chair is designed to expand and grow with the child, and it goes up and down. So all of these high-risk type devices are considered to be Class 1 medical devices. And these are the type of products that might be registered with the Therapeutic Goods Administration. So I'll just skip down. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the regulatory environment. You might think, what's this got to do with education? But it does have some implications for us. So assistive products have been mandated by the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities under the United Nations, and we're a signatory to that. So obviously we have to adhere to it. Also, the World Health Organization has established the Global Cooperation on Assistive Technology, and they're looking at a lot to do with repairs and maintenance and providing the training for that. That's very much to support developing and developed countries. In Australia, and we have had mention of this, the Therapeutic Goods Administration has the regulatory responsibility for assistive technology in Australia. And then obviously the funding bodies, such as the NDIS, Aged Care and Veterans Affairs, control the spend on repairs and maintenance, as well as the acquisition of the devices themselves. So I think that's kind of helpful just to provide that context. So what's happening today from education and training? Well, manufacturers provide training tools, parts and manuals to assistive technology suppliers. We don't have a lot of the issues that I've heard in other sectors. And I think a large part of that is because of the industry we work in. We're working with people who are vulnerable, and the type of people that come into that sector to work in that sector have a fairly generous spirit. So I think that's kind of partly helping the culture of the sector. In Australia, suppliers hire technicians, electricians, rehab engineers, and similarly skilled staff to do the maintenance and repair, and also modifications to assistive technology, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. At the moment, they receive on-the-job training and also the training from the manufacturers, and that's fairly important for us because manufacturers are very good at, as I said, at sharing all the training manuals that they have, and our suppliers keep a good control of supply of tools and parts and so on. So at the moment in Australia there is no certified training for the repair of assistive technology, and that's where my organisation has come into it, and certainly from our members there's a great interest in trying to lift that profile. So I'll just talk a little bit more about what we have to consider when we're looking at the repair of assistive products. So every time a Class 1 device, which is something that's registered through the Therapeutic Goods Administration, is modified for an individual, it has to be re-registered with the Therapeutic Goods Administration. So for example, if someone modifies a wheelchair and they have certain type of cushioning and everything, when that is modified, it goes back to the Therapeutic Goods Administration and is registered in its own right. But if somebody makes a modification to that, that person is then considered to be the manufacturer, and they then have to re-register that device. So when we're looking at the high-risk assistive technology, the process is going to be quite different in education than it might be for anything that's low risk. And we have got examples where a repair that was not made by a skilled person can result in injury or death. The example there was a powered wheelchair. Somebody put the front wheels on. They were only a millimetre or two off the specification. And when the person went up a slight ramp from the road to the footpath, the chair tipped, and unfortunately that person was killed. The wheels got caught in the foot plates. And so it's really important for people to understand the implications. It's not just about doing the repair, but what happens if I don't do the repair properly. And so that's quite a significant debate for us. So I'll just move on. The other area that I just wanted to raise, a little bit off track, I guess, with education, but there was discussion earlier about second-hand assistive or second-hand products, and we've been looking at this very closely. And when the products are sold from an individual, so we find in assistive technology a lot of parents or family members of someone who might have passed away want to get rid of that electric bed and that wheelchair or whatever that's reminding them of that loved one all the time. So they're keen to get them sold, and they put them on online platforms. This photo is from one of those platforms such as eBay. But when they're put up there, there's no check for repairs, maintenance. And in these kind of products, the other thing that we look at is infection control, because the material there has to go through a particular cleaning process. And if it hasn't had that, well, the next person buying it, you don't know, what's actually occurred for the person that previously owned the chair. So to deal with this, we have, and I think there were some ACCC people here, so you may already know this, we did approach the Therapeutic Goods Administration and ask them if it's possible to talk with the ACCC to put an alert on. So if somebody is buying a particular type of device, they have to go through a process. They have to have an assessment to determine whether or not that's safe for them. And if it is, then the question is, has it been checked and verified to make sure that it's safe to use? So these are the kind of things that we're looking at when we're looking at education and the whole training program. So when we develop the education program, we're hoping to provide all of this context for the people that will be training. So I'll just quickly jump through this, and I am racing a little bit, so I hope that's not taking too long, let me know. But the next steps for us, ATSA has developed a project, and what we've done is we've got some manufacturers of assistive technology in our team. We have the suppliers, the retailers that are selling, and we have people from remote and regional areas as well as city-based. So we've tried to get a full gamut and different types of technology. So when we're looking at technology, we can also look at the communication devices, eye gaze, all of these different sort of technology. The interesting part with this is the team have been so proactive in coming together and are very keen to source the right sort of training. In the project, we're looking at a broader aspect. One particular module that will be part of it will be repairs and maintenance. And so the first phase of this is just to identify what's out there, what training is available, and it's very limited, I'd have to say, for assistive technology. There is training available from the US, and we've been looking at that, and how do we adjust that for the Australian environment, and how do we actually provide that kind of information. So our aim is to link suppliers and those interested in working in the sector to online base level training, because one of the issues that we have is bringing people in to actually to do the repairs and maintenance. And I'm sure everybody's got issues since COVID, and our industry is no different. So how do, just basic things like how do you change a wheel, change the battery, all of these kind of things. So there'll be a base level training, and then we're also about to assess another training course that is slightly higher level training that goes more into manufacturer level type information. So ATSA's trying to identify the certified baseline and high level practical training in repairs and maintenance for assistive technology. We need to provide the relevant Australian standards as well, because some of the Australian standards refer to assistive technology. And so we've also got to be able to, oops, that's me whacking my glass, be able to take that into account, as well as having people understand what the regulatory environment from the TGA is all about. So we've got a lot more work to do, but we're hoping to have something online by the end of this calendar year. One of the other considerations when we're looking at repairs in assistive technology is who can repair what. And so that will be another phase that will start fairly soon, to say there are different types of assistive technology, some that might be quite appropriate for a consumer or a family member to repair, but then there are other types of assistive technology where it's much better to have a skilled technician do it. And so we're looking at the decision tree. What's the decision criteria to determine who should repair what? And when is it appropriate, and what training would they need in that regard? So I might leave it there. I think that's pretty much wraps me up, and look forward to the panel discussion. Thank you.
Take a seat this way. Thank you, Margaret. Can I ask Brian Savage to take a seat as well? Pick one, anyone. Now, our sound people tell us to hold the microphone as close as you can, please, so that the sound is good for our online people. Excellent. I'm going to come and join you.
Is that working?
Yeah, excellent, thank you. So we've got a little bit more time in this session for questions than we've had in some of the others. So I am quite looking forward to a dialogue for this one. Brian Savage is the Deputy CEO of the Australian Automotive Dealer Association. So we actually have someone here who represents the sector that promotes factory-trained and authorised repairer. What's interesting, Brian, is that you are also a director of ASRA, which is the brand new Australian Automotive Service and Repair Authority. So that's the body that's been formed to assist independent repairers to get access to service and repair information. So quite a contradiction there, Brian, in terms of the group that you are Deputy CEO for and your director's roles in operationalising what is a landmark right to repair legislation. So, yeah, a contradiction or not?
Okay, thanks Leslie. Perhaps I could explain some of what I would describe as the unique characteristics that franchised new car dealers experience in the provision of training, or having to be trained in fact. So franchised new car dealers operate under an agreement, and it stipulates certain things that they must perform under that agreement, and one of those is that they have to receive training. They don't have a choice in that. They have to be trained. If they're not trained, they put at risk that dealer agreement that they operate under. They also have to obtain tools and equipment to be able to perform that work. So this isn't a choice that dealers undertake, and they do so at their own expense. They do so, that also partly mitigates some risk for them. It enables them to perform warranty work and to then get paid for that warranty work. If they haven't been appropriately trained and aren't equipped, then they're unlikely to have their warranty claims honoured. So it's quite a complex relationship. The franchise dealer relationship is probably one of the oldest franchise models that exist. You know, be over 100 years old. That Henry Ford started franchising Ford dealers in the US a long time ago, and it's certainly developed and evolved since then. I'm certainly not seeking to demonise the manufacturers, but it is a fractious relationship often. Some manufacturers are absolutely fantastic and work as partners with their dealers. Others are perhaps somewhat more aggressive in terms of enforcing those requirements on the dealer network. So that puts dealers in the invidious position of having to invest huge sums of money in their repair facilities. And they do so and obviously seek to recover those costs, but in competition with independent repairers as well. When the Motor Vehicle Sharing Information Scheme came in, the MVIS, we saw that while independent repairers and franchise new car dealers are in competition with each other, the fact is that if every one of the 18.9 million registered vehicles turned up on dealer forecourts tomorrow to be repaired, that dealers could not fulfil that repair requirement. The independents are an important part of the repair process in this country. Not only that, they often work quite closely with dealers, independent repairers. Independent repairers tend to buy parts off car dealers, and car dealers are inclined to want to help them do that, encourage that, and then provide certain types of information to assist them in completing that repair. So there are well-established relationships between independent repairers and franchise new car dealers. The other, I guess, component to that is, historically at least, new cars have tended in the warranty period to go back to a dealership. Post-warranty, they tend to go into the independent repair network and have repairs done. That doesn't mean independent repairers can't service and repair brand new vehicles. They absolutely can under warranty. Likewise, franchise new car dealers are more than happy to perform service and repairs on older vehicles that are out of warranty. So those sort of relationships exist. Regarding the ASRA thing, which I started to talk about, and you've asked me about, Leslie, is the fact that the sharing of information is done on an equitable basis. So it was important for us in representing our members' interests that there was equity in the system, that independent repairers weren't given a free kick, even though they might argue that for many years dealers have had that free kick. We would say that with the implementation of the new legislation, that we want an even playing field between independent repairers and franchise new car dealers. And while it's somewhat of a rocky road, and there's some legislative interpretations that we need to work through, I think they're just growing pains in the process, and I'm sure we can get to a point that will enable that to happen. And of course the ultimate aim is to perform more efficient repairs for customers, to reduce the amount of time it takes, to reduce the costs, and the scheme aims to do that, and I think ultimately will do that, irrespective of whether a customer goes to a franchise new car dealer or an independent repairer. I hope that answers the question somewhat.
That was an exceptional answer, actually. Thank you, Brian. I'll give that one an applause. Thank you. I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate your reflection about the journey over the last 12 months that we've been on in implementing the legislation. I mean, when the law was written, there wasn't necessarily, it was hoped that it was written in a manner that it could be operationalised, that it would work on the ground, but you can't anticipate everything that's going to happen on a day-to-day basis. One of the issues about our legislation is it's written on a principled basis, so it's very broad, which means that when it comes down to interpreting whether A is okay and B is not, it becomes difficult. I still think it was right to have been written on a broad principles based, which was exactly your point there, Brian, that you finished on, which is a fair and open playing field, that consumers can choose where they get their vehicle repaired, and that the market doesn't artificially interrupt that. It doesn't give anyone a free kick, although thanks for acknowledging that you've had one for a while. So I think that's an interesting reflection, and I do think that on the balance of drafting a law, we got it pretty right. I think there are interpretations, but the reality is, from the numbers that Leanne showed us this morning, the scheme is working. People are repairing vehicles and they've got the knowledge and the skill to do that. It's ironic, I think, that we think withholding training information from skilled technicians is actually the safest road. It doesn't make any sense to me that you would give someone 80% of the knowledge that they need to repair something and justify that on the basis of safety. That isn't safe. Having all the information that you need for the job at hand, that is safe. Having said that, I'll get off my soapbox and I'll open it up to questions. John, are you going to keep an eye on Slido? Excellent. Beautiful. Let me know if you have one. We still have Alexandra with us, thank you. So feel free to broaden it out, and please do ask questions. We've got the microphone circulating. I've got one here from Clinton at the front. Oh, lights, nice, hello. Got a question at the front? Thanks, Kachana.
G'day, Clinton Brett here from Diesel Help Australia, and also proud member of AAA and also council 4x4 council committee member as well, new this year. Brian, a question yourself, and I won't stand up because no one will be able to see anyone if I stand up. I actually work closely, we actually an aftermarket training organisation, not a certified. We provide industry information, sharing of information on specialising in diesels because 10 years ago when Diesel Help Australia started, I recognised a problem as a diesel specialist, seeing that most mechanics didn't sign up for diesel, and so I wanted to educate about repairing, diagnosing to repair, not to replace. And over the 10 years, we've had a close affiliation with a lot of OEs, a lot of OE dealers. One of the big groups in Dubbo, Clancy Automotive, booked us early days to run training sessions for all their franchises, and last year we did a Toyota dealership for the first time, which was quite an honour. In respect to that, which we thoroughly enjoy working close with the OEs, not just the, now we're getting recognised by the ag trade as well, the ag sector. As from ADA perspective, would they be looking at introducing or offering factory OE training to the aftermarket independent, as I've seen what they're doing in the US, like Toyota recently did this? Is that something that you guys will be introducing?
Look, I can't speak for the manufacturers themselves, and they provide the training that franchise new car dealers participate in and are required to participate in. What I will say is through our experience at ASRA and with our US partners, if you like, NASTIF, that what has occurred in the US market is an opening up of those provisions whereby factories might train independent repairers in certain things. And who knows, it's not beyond the realms that a training organisation such as your own, Clinton, that you've set up as an independent training organisation might offer services to franchise new car dealers. What we're learning is that when we talk about that equity thing, is that it actually does open up opportunities like that and creates opportunities like that. I don't know of any plans to do that, but what I do know is I already know that there's franchise new car dealers. A lot of franchise new car dealers have joined ASRA, by the way, and our signatories just like independent repairers. But a lot of those dealers are now thinking to themselves, well, you know, they're pretty entrepreneurial bunch, franchise new car dealers as a rule. They're thinking, well, maybe we should start focusing a little more on independent repairs. Now, if they go down that track, you might make an argument that once a car's more than about 7 to 10 years old in service, that actually a lot of franchise new car dealers don't have a lot of experience in cars of that age and might be looking for training such as the type of training you're referring to. So I do think it's early days. We're 12 months old. We've got some growing pains. Hopefully those who have had anything to do with ASRA have experienced improvements over that 12-month period. But as the market sort of matures with this ASRA thing in place and this legislation in place, I think all sorts of things like that will start to fall out, and they're positives. They're good things for everyone, including consumers.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, that's what we've experienced pretty much as the OEs, the franchise have looked at that. They don't just, a lot of our clients have seen that they also, and this is going back 10 years, where they do actually work on older cars that aren't even under their brands because they're trading cars.
Look, I think it's a really good question that you've asked, Clinton, because the right to repair legislation in Australia does not compel manufacturers to provide training. And I think that's a great question because we can make that cross-sectoral. And I think I might do that now with your permission. So Margaret, you said you actually have manufacturers offering training.
Yes, in the assistive technology area, it's not an issue, as it seems to be in other sectors. So I don't know whether that's luck, but I think it's really because of the environment, as I said earlier. And the suppliers, retail suppliers and manufacturers work very closely together, and it seems to be a very effective way. So at the moment, the people providing the repairs are well trained, but there's no certification. So our aim is just to lift it to the next level.
What about, if I bring in Alexandra, what are you seeing in terms of manufacturers offering training?
If I talk for my industry, so smartphones and tablets, basically, if you're not an authorized reseller or authorized repairer, you don't have access to anything. But that's the first fact. So actually, we're building our own certifications. So one of my colleagues with another company actually built a whole training program that lasts a few months that is actually recognized by the government now as a training certification for um, smartphone and tablets. We're building our own certification on micro soldering those little devices, but I haven't heard of a manufacturer that would actually train you if you're not one of his authorized dealers.
Andrew. Other questions? I've got one up the back here. Oh, I've got a couple here. Actually, I'll take the two down here first, if that's okay, and then there's one up the back.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hello, Annette from the Reconnect project. My question's for Alexandre. We are Australia's first charity-run mobile phone repair shopfront, and we train neurodivergent young adults in repair skills so that they can find employment in the industry. We're also writing a training program that will meet an Australian accreditation standard, so very similar to the path that you've had. My question is around then, where do you see the balance between the independent repair industry signing up to an accreditation program or keeping that as a free market where they can choose to operate without there having to be the need for certification?
Well, personally, I think we should leave that the free market option, as you were saying. But if you do have that certification or any accreditation, it should be like you can see it from afar, I would say, that you would inform the customer that you are trained in a way. But today, especially in France, the market, nobody's trained. Like we maybe trained a few hundred people over the years, other training centers. Maybe you have like 2 or 3 thousand repair shops that are trained in France today. Um, Not only talking repair shops, I'm also talking refurbishing companies. So maybe actual repair shops, maybe 1,000 or 1,500. But that doesn't mean that someone that's not trained does not have a good level, but you just can't prove it. So I'm willing to leave people the benefit of the doubt, just that they have to advertise if they are trained. They should advertise it. I would not put any stress on someone that is not trained, that has a good level. I guess the Google reviews are the metric that on that particular point. But I would not add anything more complicated to someone that's already doing something good, which is repairing devices. If you start adding complicated layers to those businesses, you're just going to prevent businesses from doing repair. So I don't want it to be counterproductive, even though if it would be nice if we could have everyone that's trained.
Leanne, did you have a question as well? Have I got you here? No microphone, Kachana, beside you?
Sorry. I actually had, hi Alexandra, it's Leanne Wiseman. It's lovely to meet you and thank you very much for providing a beautiful French sunrise for us here in Australia. Thanks for getting up so early. I'm really interested in the people who are coming to you for training skills. So how big is the demand and how are you meeting that demand? And you know, just tell us about the people who are learning these repair skills. I'm really interested to hear more about that.
So we train about, I'd say, 8 to 20 people every month on different programs, either basic or very advanced micro soldering programs. They come from everywhere. Some people are, so I don't know if you have that equivalent in Australia, but if you don't have a job in France, you have some money coming in, and you do have to like actively look for a job, and you have training that's offered. that you find a new job. I don't know if you have something like that. So that's a lot of the people. And on the micro soldering part, which is a training that's reserved for skilled technicians, and we're going to give them more skills. Those are usually professionals. So either they're independent repairers, their own, like maybe the owner of the business. Sometimes one of the technicians, and a lot of them also are from refurbishing companies. So those are companies that maybe process, 10,000 phones a month, and they have maybe like, 20 people working for them. So they train their people too. So we probably have all a very broad spectrum of people. And then regarding what they would be doing in their previous life, we've had engineers, cooks, truck drivers, farmers. We've had pretty much every single kind of type of employment before people coming to learn repair at our place. And our observation is that everybody can do it. I think we've only had a few rare exceptions where people had actually maybe a trembling problem, or their eyes were really, really bad, or maybe some memory problem, which they would mix up the screws, But except those very rare problems, everybody was able to go through the training and was able to deliver a proper service. So maybe some of them are not as fast as others. It is very true that we have observed that actually women are usually best, and then the youngest the person is, the better it is. I don't really know why, but we've had people that are like 17 or 18. We have trained them, and basically in a week they become like really, really, really good. Like I would totally hire that person in my shop or whatever. So I don't really know why that happens, but that's just the facts. That's what we observed.
Delivering the microphone this high up. Matthew Kearns from University of New South Wales. I actually have two questions. One is for Brian. Brian, I would really appreciate it if you could paint a picture of the next 10, 15 years as the nature of the domestic fleet changes, particularly with EVs predicted to form a greater share of the car fleet, and what that means particularly for the independent repair sector. My own insight into that is the guy that I go to tells me that he's got a 15-year career horizon and then he's gone. I'm sure that's a not unfamiliar sentiment that you're hearing, but I'd love to hear that, what you see in your space. Margaret, a question for you as well. One thing that I think may be unique about this assistive technology space, but you're the expert, is mandated periods where products are mandated that they be, their use is discontinued in, say, a 5-year period, for example, which does, I think, result in a substantial quantity of technologies ending up in some form of underutilisation, for example. And I wonder if that's accurate, and if there's something we could do about that in this broader context.
Thanks for that. Brian.
Look, I can't really speak on behalf of independent repairers, I suppose, but perhaps from an ASRA point of view, I can partially at least answer your question. While the evolution from ICE and internal combustion engine cars to EVs is undeniably introducing a huge quantum shift in technology and requirements for training that come about as a result of that shift. There's also a whole heap of transferable skills that still remain, and people often tend to forget that, and more so is becoming the case, that EVs sometimes have gearboxes, they have gearbox oil, they have cooling systems, they have water pumps to drive those cooling systems, they have braking systems, steering and suspension. There's a whole range of component sets in an EV that are, to a greater or lesser degree, common to an ICE vehicle. So I think the transfer of skills is required of technicians who are repairing those vehicles is probably really up to the individual as to whether they want to be trained and educated on on a new type of vehicle. You know, your technician, he's probably been through a few changes already. He would have gone from carbies to fuel injection and ECU and, you know, controls, and maybe he just hasn't got the patience to do that again. But a lot will, and a lot can. The limitation at the moment is the provision of training, especially on the EV stuff. The training providers are somewhat overwhelmed by the influx of technicians requiring training on EVs. So that is an issue for us at the moment, certainly. That's holding back the industry and is having an impact on customers as well as the technicians who are seeking to perform those repairs.
There's some hope in that though, Brian, isn't there? When we've got EV training courses with wait lists of 300 and 400 technicians as waitlisted. So I think it's an indication of an industry that is going through its next evolution. I absolutely agree with you, Brian. We say this frequently. Automotive technicians have already seen revolutions in technology and have changed with the technology in the vehicle. And there'll certainly be some changes in service offerings. So we're going to have to get good as independent repairers on things like battery optimisation. It's now going to be about optimising the power from the battery to the wheels, and checking the battery health becomes a brand new service offering. So we will evolve with the vehicle. We always have. And I'm very optimistic that we're capable of continuing that evolution. I do see some technicians, Brian, saying, I've seen my last technology revolution, thanks very much, and I respect that. But I think we'll also see the introduction of a brand new workforce. I think, as Alexandre said about some of the mobile technology that he's looking at, we're seeing new entrants coming in to becoming automotive repairers because of their skill in diagnosis, in computers. So it's an exciting period, looking forward to new skill blends coming into the industry. So, but great question, by the way. Margaret, would you like to talk about the durability and the life of assisted technologies?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's not an easy answer. It's quite variable, in fact. It's not that everybody's, if they're finished after 5 years for the lifespan of a piece of assistive technology, they let it go. It doesn't work that way. If you're looking at paediatrics, they tend to turn over quite fast. And the reason for that isn't just because of growth spurts, it's because children can be really rough on the assistive technology, and the more confident they are, the more they get about. But then you look at other people who can hold on to their same, say, powered wheelchair. Their condition doesn't change much in terms of the supports they need, the particular type of extra activities they want to do, and the wheelchair is still meeting those needs. What we do find sometimes is that people might ask for an additional piece of assistive technology. So if you're looking at, say, someone in a regional area, they might have a more like a four-wheel drive type of wheelchair, and then when they go into the shopping, they might like something that's something a bit more basic kind of thing. So it's suitable for the environment in which they're participating. Then you have the funding bodies are not being very prescriptive in terms of how long somebody has to keep a piece of assistive technology. And another change that's happening at government is now that instead of people having, through the NDIS and aged care and so on, they're looking at lengthening the reviews. And once a person has an assessment, their piece of, or the type of assistive technology they might need is determined. They'll run a trial, and that's when the suppliers come into play. They help then modify the device for that individual if that's required. And then from there, there's follow-up with that person. And then there's a series of maintenance. So the more maintenance that's approved and is part of the process, the longer the device will last. And so that's another important aspect. And as the government departments are now saying, well, instead of doing a review every year, we'll do a review every 3 years, or they're changing that process, and that's happening quite a bit through the different reviews that are on at the moment, such as the NDIS review and the review of aged care, then that is going to make a difference as well. So the only challenge we have in that process is innovation. And that comes to something I think that was discussed earlier. What's the balance between somebody keeping a piece of assistive technology and then being able to get a new piece that might have more features in it that helps them achieve more goals? And so what's the approval process for that? People who are privately buying can, of course, choose to do that whenever it suits them.
Thanks,
But I think,
Margaret.
does that cover?
Excellent. Thanks, Margaret. That's excellent. We've got some questions on Slido, John.
2 questions maybe for some quick answers, and you can choose who should answer them. 2 good ones. Has any tier of Australian government, local, state, federal, shown any appetite to get involved in training initiatives for repair in any product category or industry? So, appetite from government at any level in training?
Well, look, I think it's very sector specific, John, so it's probably a long answer, but I think things like the Queensland Government's decision to subsidise electric vehicle training for mechanics is important. I think that's a good sign, that it's specifically about a government intervening to say we want to see more people with these skills. So I suspect the answer to that is that it's very sector specific and it's very filling gaps that are emerging.
Okay.
Unless Brian and Margaret want to add anything.
I would just say government departments, as they're conducting different reviews in the social sector, are looking more at reuse of assistive technology, and so there'll be more emphasis on training in the medium term.
Another question for you, Margaret, from someone online. They say location is an issue. Many second-hand assistive devices are discarded in resource recovery centres where the repair training doesn't exist to fix them. Any response or comment on that?
Yes, that's one of the projects that we've been discussing with the National Disability Insurance Scheme and the NDIA who administers it, in terms of a decision tree. So when a piece, this is an issue, and this is the whole issue of assistive technology wastage that we're starting to do quite a bit of work on, and we have a lot of interest from the NDIS in what we're doing at the moment. So we're looking at a decision tree where people can say, if this device is no longer required, how does it get collected? Where does it go? Who does the assessment on that to determine can it be reissued? What needs to happen? And then can it be, or if not, can it be recycled? And then who collects it and what's the partnership with recyclers? So there's quite a process to work through on this. Some of our members have already got this type of process established, but we want to have something that's a little bit more national and more transparent and open to all users of assistive technology and their families and carers. So I think it's going to take us a few years to get this nailed down, but that's the process that we're currently trying to develop.
Thanks, John. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank all of our panellists?
That was fabulous. Thank you, Leslie. Alexandre, thank you for joining us. It's been magnificent watching it, the dawn behind you, and I know you're staying on for the next session. I do hope someone's got you a cup of coffee, because you did join at 5:30 a.m. your time.